What's up, y'all? It's Throwing Light. I am LTJ Reeds, and if you're why do I keep messing up? If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. I'm here tonight with some upcoming, not an upcoming person in our community, but also some upcoming things that are coming in our community. I've got Mr. Third Coast Leather 2024 Shade here on tonight on Throwing Light. I'm so excited. I was actually there present when Shade was Ash. I think I went up to you and I said, "Hello, Shade. I'm Light." I think that's what I said. So,
Yep, yep.
oh, welcome to Throwing Light. I'm so glad to have you. You're here in San
Thank you.
Antonio. How's it going? How are you feeling?
It's great. Yeah, yeah. We had our monthly gear night last night in San Antonio, so we had a great time. Kinky Carnival, and it was lumberjack themed, so it was a lot of fun.
I have been able to come to Kinky Carnival. I think the last Kinky Carnival I went to might have been for Halloween.
Okay, yeah, that's a popular one too.
Or I came and did the bar crawl. Do you remember with Mo?
Yeah,
Was that during Kinky Carnival?
I don't remember what day that was on. I remember it happening, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, anyway, and when you say your group, you're talking about the San Antonio Leathermen, of course.
that's right.
hmm Before
Yeah,
we get
I'm
talking about them, let's talk about you for a second. How did you
awesome.
first get involved into all this heroicism, heroic, whatever, heroism?
Well, I've been in and out of the kink scene for a long time, probably 10 or 12 years. I was part of an earlier group in San Antonio called Sage, the San Antonio Gear Enthusiasts, which was a different kind of vibe from the Leathermen, and it was cool too. But I wasn't super heavily involved. I was at a lot of their meetings, but not a lot of their events. And 2 years ago, I had made a friend on Twitter named Lupin, who's really cool. He just moved to Chicago from San Antonio, but he invited me to come to a Kinky Carnival one month, and I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll check it out." And went out wearing a latex singlet and some leather, straps and stuff, and made a lot of friends. So, and that night, Joey, who's the president of the San Antonio Leathermen, he's very proactive about like, oh, you're into gear, you're into leather, you're interested in this club. So I started going to those meetings, and friendships deepened, and I just got pulled further and further in. So yeah,
How long ago was it when you first entered San Antonio Leatherman?
the Leatherman, it was last, no, not last. It was 2023 April, or was it last year? Maybe it was as soon as last year. No, that's not possible. It was 2023 April. Yeah.
That,
So like I
um,
say, I've been around. I'd gone to the Annex when we had that. That was our bar with our sort of leather bar before we had an official leather bar, which burned down several years ago. But before it burned down, I used to go to that every once in a while and check out the gear nights, and there were gear nights at knockouts every once in a while too.
no.
In the room that is now the San Antonio Eagle that just opened a few weeks ago.
Oh, wait, I forgot. Okay.
Yeah, big,
We're gonna when we get to the decorating, we need to talk about where an after party will be. Okay, so maybe we can have that conversation.
perfect.
I love what you're wearing, by the way. I love your leather. It's very American. It's very,
Thank you.
very
Yeah,
pretty.
this was what I wore for my formals for the Third Coast, the glue competition for Third Coast Leather. I had it made for me. My my partner Toast has a friend in Pakistan who does custom leather. So we did the design and he put it together and sent it to me. So
Post
it
your
was exciting.
partner.
Yeah, well, I mean, paramour. I don't know what the word is. We don't have my bro, my step bro. Um, I've got I've got two step bros, Toast and Patch. So,
Your
um,
partner or your stepbro?
well, I like to use step bro because it's if you say brothers, that term has been so deflated by overuse in a lot of different situations where it doesn't imply a depth of relationship anymore. I feel so because if I say, "Oh, it's my brother," they're like, "Oh, your leather brother." That could mean anybody. But so we're like, I'm going too far into this, but it's just like a way of expressing that it's brotherhood, but it's kinky.
Okay,
If that
okay.
makes sense.
I'm learning. I'm trying. I'm trying to learn here.
So
Um,
am I.
I gotta keep up with the terminology.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. So, you got involved with the San Antonio Leatherman. You are the historian.
that's true.
And
Yep.
as historian, okay, well, I don't know, why did you choose that first? What brought you to want to be an historian? And what types of things are you collecting as a historian?
Sure. I was chosen. I didn't choose. It was a board appointed position, so they were looking for somebody to start documenting events. Currently, or not currently, but before I was around, it was just the president Joey who was taking a lot of photos, and that's a lot to do on top of everything else he does. So, taking photos of events and creating a sort of documentary history of what we've done as a club so far. And I'm working on a yearbook for us that sort of covers the first couple of years of our history, and just shows the kinds of events we've done and how the club has evolved over time. But also, I'm a classicist and historian by education, I guess. I wouldn't say by trade because I've not made any money from it. But I'm also interested in queer history and in the history in San Antonio specifically of how our uh, culture has developed over time, specifically in the sort of queer world, which is something I'm just starting to get into and working on along with the education committee on the Leathermen. So I did a couple of educational talks. I did one on uh, male sex in ancient Greece, which was, well, I thought it was interesting, but I was doing it, so that's
Say that again.
fine.
What you say? What? Say that one more time.
It was on male sex in ancient Greece, and I was going to say, oh, it was interesting, but that's self-aggrandizing because I was teaching it, so it might not have been interesting, but I was interested while I was teaching it.
Wait, so is
Um,
your background in education?
it was in I have a couple of master's degrees in classics and theology. Yeah, so
Oh, you have
lot,
a couple of master degrees in theology?
yeah, it's not my fault, but my university gave a master's for undergrad and postgrad. So one of them is an undergrad master's, which really just means a regular undergrad degree. But the other one I actually, was a real master's where I had to do a thesis on it was on this demonological text from the 1500s from Italy called Strix, which is the witch. So it was during the witchcraft trial craze. There were a lot of really interesting books published, most of which have not been translated to English yet, from various languages, but primarily Latin. So mine was a Latin text, and my final project was developing it and preparing it for a translation, which I didn't end up doing, but it's ready for a translation. So
I found all that interesting. My background, I have a master's in English creative writing, and then I have all the dissertation as a PhD for creative writing with a background in early American history, English Renaissance, masculinity studies, and narrative films. So I can nerd out with the best, but also
yeah,
understand humans pretty well. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So um I don't people don't really might not see it like this, but when you especially I mean, with a maybe humanities degree or especially with a English degree, it's like kind of learning the psychology of people at the same time and what motivates people and all that. But
There's a lot of that.
I don't
I'm
know,
sorry.
at my university, and this plays into the climate. Even I'm pretty sure, but they cut the entire philosophy department out. So that whole, I mean, philosophy is not popular in Louisiana. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's interesting. So with this background, you enjoy a lot of research. Do you find yourself writing essays or anything of the sorts?
Yeah, there was a period of my life where I was working as a professional translator for Latin texts for a publishing company. So I was continuing the kind of work I had been doing in school, but then I also did some research papers. There's one that was published in a essay collection on Batman comics by this one author, Grant Morrison, and what he drew from Renaissance demonology text and put into Batman, which was interesting. He's a real cool writer that's like a chaos magician and has all sorts of really interesting things that he brings to the table for that are different from normal mainstream American comics. So I've done a few essays like that. I'm really interested in the last few years in sort of pre-Stonewall gay literature. So I've been, collecting old Muscle magazines, and also I've been going through there are a lot of books that were published that are by queer authors or about queer subjects that just have kind of gone under the radar in the modern day just because they're maybe a little bit old-fashioned writing styles. There are books like Quatrefoil, which is my absolute favorite romance book of all time. That's about a guy who comes back from World War II and falls in love with an older man, and then that has consequences in all the rest of his life. But I liked about it that it was focused on the characters and how it was focused on it as a love story, not as a specifically like this is how this is different from straight love stories. It was like this is just love, and now they're having to deal with all this crap from everybody else around them. So it's really good. But that's a sort of field of passion, and I'm working on eventually a sort of publishing project to republish some stuff that's out of print. So that's early days still, but I'm working on that.
That's cool. I might be actually reaching out to you for some help and some assistance, and maybe
Cool. Yeah,
some
please
action
do.
because I know I definitely wanted to motivate myself more from a research standpoint. Um, why is it important for us to know our history, Shade?
There are so many reasons. I mean, the sort of standard answer is so that we don't repeat it. But I find it fascinating, especially when you look at something that's a far distant history. Like my degree and my studies started with classical studies. So I was looking at, you know, uh, I ended up focusing on late antiquity. So that's like roughly the 200s AD to the 7 or 800s, depending on how you mark it out. So between the classical period and the Middle Ages. And when you look at a culture that is so far removed from how we live currently, and then look at how they enacted sexual relationships and how they litigated those, because a lot of our evidence about ancient past sex stuff is from legal documents that are saying like this is what you can't do, and from that we have to kind of try to figure out okay, well, what did they do, and then we can look at literature, at poetry, and these kind of things. But it is interesting looking back then. You see a lot of the same stuff that happens now, but also with classical cultures in particular, there was a time period where male love in particular was in some ways celebrated, but within the confines of these sort of bad social mores that they had, where rather than sex being based on consent like it is today in most legal senses, it was based on power dynamics. So it was okay to have sex, to top somebody who was of a lower social status or a different sort of class as you. But if someone of a lower class tops someone of an upper class, that's a problem and that's illegal. Or the power dynamic thing became the sort of standard for sexual morality, which I think now we probably all could agree is not the way it should be. And that's one of the big shifts between ancient texts and now. But the lesson that I learned from that is be careful, even when we get to a point, God willing, that we are no longer being litigated against as queer people and we're no longer being like our actions aren't being made illegal for stupid reasons. It's still possible after that for us to be doing shitty things like the ancient Greeks famously. There's a lot of pederasty involved in their sexual dynamics a lot of times, or at least in the documents that come down to us, and that's not good. So it's just there are a lot of lessons to learn in terms of both how were things different back then in a bad way, and how are things different back then in a better way. So that's a long answer for a short question. Sorry.
I don't think so. I think the issue kind of, you said that we study history to remember, but like that's not what's happening right now.
That's good.
It's not that's not happening because look what situation we're in right now. We now have a chaotic government now that is not going to be kind and friendly to us. And we had a lot of our people vote on the other side, way
Yeah.
more than they should have. They should
Yeah.
be. But I don't know. I don't know how we do that. We have to come up with new strategies.
For sure.
We have to make education fun. We have to make education cool because they're not digesting it. Because we should not
Mhm.
be in this position. We should not. Our community shouldn't be throwing our own people under the bus. Why are gay men siding with those and trying to deny trans people? Like
Yeah.
to see like the letter T be erased. You know what I'm saying?
And
Just like
yeah, I think yeah, people always want a scapegoat. They always want somebody that they can say is the other that is lower than them. And that's unfortunately continuing to a large extent, even among LGBT groups or LGB groups, I guess, where it's like, okay, yeah, everybody hates you guys right now, but if they hate you guys, maybe they won't hate us as much.
that. Totally.
And
You
it's
know,
like
it's
such
just
a
that.
disgusting way to.
That's what it is. It's like, oh, I want
Yeah,
these people to like me. And it's like, why? Because they're
yeah,
not going to ever see you as an equal human. It's
exactly.
never
And
going to be that way.
that's a hard lesson for people to learn, I think, and a lesson people don't want to learn that like no matter what you do, you will never be the person that will be in favor with say like a Christian nationalist or like a hyper conservative person. Like a queer person is never going to be that. They will never like you enough for you to actually be a part of that society and still be able to live the life that it is who you are. So and I say that, there's also there are other aspects to this where like we also need to look at like where can we improve dealing with like the ground level issues of what people are angry about besides stuff that is psychotic and evil. There are also people like dealing with the bad outcomes of our method of doing life in the United States, where your job is the most important thing, money is God, and you value your value is based on your productivity. Like those things are always going to lead to a large number of people falling through the cracks, especially people who don't have access to jobs that they want because of things like they don't want to hire a trans person or people who have disabilities who aren't able to be like productive in the sense that you know sort of late stage capitalism wants them to be. So I don't know. There are things that we can be doing better, and I think focusing on those is an important thing. But also like a lot of us have seen this coming for a long time, but like they're like Project 2025 was out there. Like we know the kind of things that they want to accomplish. And I'm not sure that as individuals there's a way for us to stop it, but we can be ready for it a little bit. Like I fully expect that someone is going to try to illegalize pornography because that's in Project 2025, using the Comstock Act, which they used to make it illegal pre 1968. But since 1968, they've said this law is not how we do things anymore because the First Amendment allows you to express yourself even if it's sexual. So like that's probably going to at least be attempted at some point in the next 4 years, and that's going to affect a huge number of people, both actual porn producers and sex workers involved in OnlyFans and that kind of things, and also just like people who want to consume the culture that we create. Like pornography is part of our culture. Like there is a richness there that, if lost, would be a great detriment to all of us. So again,
That's the
rambling,
whole
but
thing. That's really hard to get people to sell in our like puritanical need to be wherever. But the greater scale, the bigger issue, and what I was even thinking about, we talked about when we resigned to the fact of people just being awful towards each other. Like, where
Mhm.
is that? And where does that come from? The need to conquer, the need to control, the need to have power over, the need to kick people when they're down, to make people feel bad. Like, where does that come from? Why does that have to be? And I've reached out to men, some mentors and people with my plans and with my goal. Here, I'm doing throwing lights. Do you know how much I've accomplished in just doing this? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
networking, connecting with people. And a year ago, someone probably would have told me no, or I would have heard, no, you're not gonna this, that's cool in theory. I've been like, hey, if we want to be progressive in our community, why are we gendering sashes? Let's stop gendering sashes. Well, that sounds good in theory, but it's not. We're not ready. No, right now, there's time is out. Time is out right now. We either thrive or we die. That's really ultimately it comes down to. And if we can inspire each other within our own community to be the examples of what we want to see in the universe, if we start, I mean, that this is horrible. We can't be divided right now. So,
Yeah, and that's a big part of like one of the things we can do is try to practice the things that we think are right and try to create role models, which a lot of the people I've known so far who are title holders have been really living into that and really trying to do things in their community like what you're doing. There I could name a bunch of names, but somebody would end up feeling left out. But like there are people who are really earnestly trying to sort of like live out in an idealistic way what a Leatherman can be, and I think that's awesome. And I am also trying that, but in my niche is kind of different, and I'm working
oh,
on it.
like we us like I said, Austin Gears we met today, and like I said, I'm going to try. I decided to give myself grace, take some stress off of my plate because I gave 95% of the community my time to the community last year, and I was Mr. Austin Eagle, and I'm still Mr. Austin Eagle until I get my sass on
Yeah.
to where he needs to be, and then I've done my part in that role. But it can, being a leader is really about how well of a role model you are and stuff. And there are a lot of title holders. You're in your title, you're in your IML year right now. And when that's over, you kind of start to see, like, it's after IML you start to kind of see who is really walking the walk.
Mhm.
And for me, people might see me as someone taking pictures and going this place and stuff, but I'm down in the trenches doing the dirty work too. And
Mhm.
I got even more motivated as I got to enter this brotherhood and join International Mr. Leather and go through that experience. So here's my question to you. I know you have some things going on that you've been involved in. You wanted to mention a few things. You want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm running a monthly movie night with the San Antonio Leathermen. Right now, it's almost every month. It's the second Wednesday of the month at Club 727. So we're highlighting and we're spotlighting queer movies and leather related movies. And it has been really awesome so far. They're really good to us at 727, and they really helped me get everything set up so that you're watching a movie on a big screen. And most recently, we watched Pink Narcissus, which is one of the best queer art films, in my opinion, in the entirety of the history of film. So check it out if you haven't seen it. I think there's a copy on archive.org. Um, but yeah, besides that, we're putting on. I don't know. We're doing a lot with San Antonio Leatherman. I'm the historian, so I'm like I'm not usually the guy planning stuff, but I do try to do a few non-bar events. Like the movie nights are take place at a bar, but it's not really like a bar night. But we do roller skating nights, and I'm gonna do some ice skating nights once it gets warm enough to feel like that makes sense, um, and things like that. So I'm doing that. Also, let's see. I've been working with Camp NACTI. We just did a Christmas special over the holidays. It's a mini movie, 30 minutes long. That's got us reenacting in a humorous and queer way. There's like a nativity scene and a Christmas Carol and The Night Before Christmas. I played Scrooge, which was a lot of fun. So
I would love to see that. Jesus, I want to see that.
it's on YouTube. I can send you a link.
Please
It,
do.
it Yeah, it was amazing. It was really well done, and we worked really hard on it for a lot of weekends. And yeah, Rohart Productions made it a wonderful guy named Roland was the director and was really good. And so anyway, that was also a lot of fun. It brought a bunch of us together just to do like a fun project where we're getting to be artistic, we're getting to do the acting we like or the filmmaking we like, but also getting to make something cool that the camp can show off. Camp NACTI, if you don't know about it, is a clothing optional campsite outside of San Antonio. It's very queer friendly and it's super cool. So yeah, it's awesome. So I've been doing that stuff too. And I'm
So,
also working on. I am. I'm putting together, have been for the last couple, I guess like 6 months, trying to put together a kind of talk show that will focus on like queer art history and culture, and then also kink. So I'm coming soon. Look out.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'll be curious as to what you call it. Before we get towards the end, I do want to kick out real quickly. I will be in San Antonio and I will be at Sir Rat doing the Naked People reading, which is NPR, something I've been doing here in Austin. I'm working with Sir Rat now, and we're partnering to try to do these in other cities. I've gladly reached out to Shay to help get the word out and to get readers for it. And Toast has been helping me too. And Toast is on here. Hello, Toast. And so before I want to talk a little bit about like why that why that interests you, why something having events and stuff like that's important. And then I kind of want to get your final opinions on things. So what kind of attracts you to the idea of reading naked? Why do you think even doing something like that is uh,
Well, to quote Job, naked as from the womb I came, I thither shall return again. No, I'm just kidding. It's just, nudity is fun, and it is something like, especially with going to Camp Nacti a lot, it is a very freeing thing to start being more comfortable being nude around other people. I grew up very, very puritanical, and I would change clothes inside of the bathroom stalls and all that for gym. But I'm just kind of trying to embrace that, and I think it's really good for people to get to go into an environment where a not necessarily sexualized nudity is present, because I think especially as Americans we forget that, or we tend not to realize that like nudity is not automatically sexual. Like this is the natural state of human beings, and so reading for me is also my natural state. So I'm combine the two. Why not? Sounds great.
That's the point. The point is that we can express ourselves, our sexual sides without the physical act of sex.
Yeah,
Like there's so many, sex is a multifaceted word and used in so many different ways. And people need to stop being scared of that and start investing in that. Start to
yeah,
understand it because it's not something that we more, if it's consensual, that's the only moral thing you need to hold up is having consensual interactions sexually. And even when that's why we're doing the naked reading because, like you said, we're born naked, y'all. We're the ones that create the anxiety of being clothed and all that type of stuff. But this is also about vulnerability. And I want to just kind of say this real quick. At the naked reading, we're reading things of all kinds: love stories, horror stories, I've been reading on stories about child abuse and things that I've gone through naked because it's a double thing here. It's also to not take things so seriously, one, two, but to also feel comfortable in who you are. And
yeah,
we've had different body types. We've had trans men, cis women, men. I hope that we continue to inspire people with just the community of that, just being glad and comfortable with you are. It has helped
yeah,
people, and I hope that people understand that doing things like this is really ultimately just about being supportive for people, no matter who they are and what they look like.
yeah. And also just like in general, it's one of those things where it's like public nudity is frowned upon, but it's one of those things that makes no sense to be frowned upon. So if you have the ability to do something, and especially if you've got the permission, like we've got, it's a rat, and other people think it's bad, I almost feel like there's a duty to do it and show them, no, this is good. Look, this is fun.
But
Screw you. But
dealing with energies that just refuse, they think of this as the other, as this as not not normal. And all we can do is to continue to push like realistic narratives and realistic lives and realistic people as much as we can. Towards the end of Throwing Light, I always ask everyone the same question. Shade, you are going to get this question. Is there any aspect of our community that you feel that we are not shedding light on? Or shedding enough light on that we should shed more light on?
I feel like this maybe isn't the coolest answer, but I do think our history is something that we don't look at often enough, especially pre-Stonewall history, because like I understand Stonewall and beyond is really cool and is where kind of a lot of people come into the scene and can start getting recognized. But there there are times, especially in American history, where like there were really strong queer voices and queer people working towards creating a culture even when America was at its most conservative, like the sort of post World War II Reconstruction era. Um, like there were still people working then, and I think it helps us to empathize with people who are in those kind of situations because we look at there are some who are doing things that we would look at and be like, yeah, that's the kind of thing I would do, and there are some who were like trying to push things forward without being othered so much. So it's the sort of difference between assimilationism and non-assimilationism. Both are in their own ways, I think, valid. I tend to like the non-assimilationists more, but there were people like uh, the Mattachine Society who were like saying stuff that's kind of off kilter, like trying to throw more non-normative gays under the bus, and I don't like that. But they also were, trying to push things forward. So they were doing work that should be recognized, and we should see our forebears and see what they were doing, not only so we can learn from it, but also just because it's interesting. So,
I agree with
uh,
you. I'm trying to get more into industry, especially as I'm working on my first book now and trying to, because like for me, I've been really reconciling with the fact of how much Pedro Zamora was influential for me growing up. And,
mhm.
seeing someone with AIDS on television, and I realized how that impacted me to be less scared of HIV and AIDS. And so that's something I've been really delving in my own personal writing and things too, is the heroes we might not have appreciated that we had,
Yeah.
back then. But anyways, all right. So, well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Throwing Light. Thank you so much, Shade, for being on here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so
Thanks for having me.
are you going to IML?
Yes, I'm going to IML this year.
So
Yeah.
I will be around. I am always a resource. If you need anything,
Awesome.
I will be there. I know that unfortunately the previous Mr. Third Coast did not go to IML, but if you need anything, I will be glad to fulfill in any role to help support you getting ready from now until May. So you just tell me whatever you need, I'll be there for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, you'll know me on the stage. I'll be the one with the deer in the headlights, scared, terrified look. So, no.
Look, hey, I was contestant number one last year, buddy.
Ooh, ooh,
It doesn't
I
get
know.
better
Yeah,
than
that's
that. It doesn't get
terrifying.
better. So you'll be fine. But all
Yeah.
right, so there's one thing you have to do that ends the show. Are you ready? You're going to repeat after me when I count to three, okay? When I count to three, you're going to say, if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right, okay? If you're
Okay.
not throwing light, you're not acting right. I'm going to count to three. Are you ready?
Yep.
One, two, three.
If you're not throwing shade, wait a second. If you're not throwing light, sorry. If you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
There you
All right.
go. You're not throwing shade. We're the opposite of shade here. No.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
All right.
if we were like, I guess if we were superheroes, would we be like each other's like opposites?
We might be, or just a reskin in a video game, It's like one's light, one's shade. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so that brings it in. I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything.